The next item is a staff report to deliver to the board, a preliminary engineering report on the Gatling Pointe Waterline. And while we have Mr. Don Jennings coming up to give you that report, you all may recall in November of 2014, you directed staff to provide this PER to assess route alternatives for a public water source to the Gatling Pointe community from the existing county-owned water main.
Excuse me, Ms. Seward, could I don't want to steal any thunder here from this presentation, and maybe I am, but part of this rationalization for this is that, you know, we have had this agreement with the town that's been in place for 5 years, and it's been a substantial increase in rate to, you know, 64%. I'm getting hit of numbers, but that's really the motivation behind, part of the motivation behind looking at this, so.
That is part of it. We actually have.
Excuse me, let me,
Yeah.
I'll just.
We
I'll
have
let y'all
a
carry
lot of different reasons that really.
Let's
we
hear them.
think-
I'm sorry for
Okay.
interrupting.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here to talk about a project you may be aware of. We have the preliminary engineering reports for the Nike Park water improvements that I'd like to share with you the results of. Summary of the topics that we'll talk about is on the screen. Route selection, a brief discussion about why do we, as the public, construct water lines, some points that we definitely need to consider in moving forward, dangers of the do-nothing option, and finally, staff recommendation. So jumping into it, probably the first thing you may notice on the screen is that Gatling Pointe's not shown. This is a blow-up of all the alternative routes. It was a little hard to see, and it still may be hard to see. To orient you, Carrollton Boulevard is here, Brewer's Neck is here, the Bartlett Water Tower is here. So the routes kind of range from a connection on Brewer's Neck to a connection that was proposed to come down Smith's Neck. And the lion's share of them converge at Reynolds and Nike Park, go down Nike Park, and then they're all the same after this point, so that part's not shown.
Where Titus Creek intersects.
Titus Creek intersects right there, yes, sir. So the criteria that were used were cost, environmental effects, easement acquisition, landowner effects, and traffic impacts. We analyzed 6 routes, and route number 5 was recommended at a cost of $3.8 million. It's important to note that we looked at a 75-year potential life cycle, so these are long-term decisions that we're making today, and that's kind of a recurring theme of this presentation, is that we have to look down the road for these types of projects. 4.3 miles. Each option required a directional drill at Jones Creek, and we can immediately pick up 587 customers. That's households between Gatling Pointe, and Battery Park. And another important note, funding is already in place. This route connects an existing 16-inch main on Carrollton to Gatling Pointe with a new 12-inch main. We kind of come down the backside of Eagle Harbor to get to Reynolds Drive, and then we go to Nike Park the rest of the way to Gatling Pointe. It's going to take about 2 years from the time, if this is authorized. The first 8 to 10 months will consist of a concurrent process of review, permitting, and design. Bid and award is going to take about 2 months, and the actual work will probably take plus or minus a year.
And that's from the point of approval, that 2 years.
That's after the bidding and award.
If
Yes, sir.
approved.
Mhm. So the recommended route is as shown here. This is the entire alignment between Carrollton and Gatling Pointe. Again, we left off on the other slide here. They all converge across Jones Creek and then down Battery Park. And this is, by the way, North Gate. This is North Gate, so that's the backside of Eagle Harbor. It will be coming around. So why do we construct water lines? Sustainability is a key factor in this decision. Our WTWA water supply is safe, efficient, reliable, and plentiful. Another reason is redundancy or backup lines for emergency supply. This would allow, in times of an emergency, for the county to supply the town, or the town to supply the county, if we have a major disruption in one of our mains. And last but not least, we are obligated to ensure, again, a long-term reliable supply to our customer base. Now, we're going to talk about, and the bulk of this presentation is about some points to consider in moving forward. And as we saw in Ms. Seward's presentation, annexation is not the best thing for the county, and annexation implies development occurring in the area. So whether we do anything or not, that development is going to happen. And if it happens in an annexed area, the county loses on services and revenue, and it impacts all town and county residents. The next slide will show you areas where Smith has identified interest in annexation, and extending this water line will help prevent annexation in certain areas. The town also requested, as we discussed earlier, a concurrent renewal. Again, your 64% number was accurate. We've seen a WTWA increase of 16.5% over that same 5-year period. So right now, we're paying more for town water than we are for WTWA water. And this is the map we discussed to orient you here. The circle area is Scott Farm. We'll get to that later. And Gatling Pointe is north and south. Gatling Pointe are just on the other side of Scott Farm. Going back, this date is hard to see. This annexation map was done in April 2015. So another issue, groundwater is becoming a crisis in the region. We have identified that the aquifer levels are declining at an alarming rate. The state has responded by imposing groundwater permit withdrawal restrictions. The graphic here just shows a cone of depression, which is the drawdown that occurs with any well. This is a typical well, but maybe more importantly than the graphic is the source. And I have here, and I'll make available on the website for you, if that's acceptable, a report that was prepared by Virginia Tech and associated with another consultant. It was done in August of 2014, and it's got a rather lengthy title, so further on in the presentation we'll just call it the DEQ report, but it's entitled, please bear with me, An Investigation of the Economic Impacts of Coastal Plain Aquifer Depletion and Actions that May be Needed to Maintain Long-Term Availability and Productivity. So DEQ report's a little better. But one of the major findings in this report is that the town may not be able to adequately supply their customers as soon as the year 2020.
Don, do they generally implement changes at the time of renewal?
Yes, I believe that's
Where
correct.
is Smithfield in that strategy?
I think they've been renewed in the last couple years. They were, if I recall, cut to their current rate, I know is 1.27 million gallons a day. I think they were just, that permit was just renewed a couple years ago. It's probably in this report, but I don't want to.
That was a decrease? Was allowed?
Yes, sir.
Everybody's
trend-
been decreased.
Everybody's been decreased.
Yeah, we on the, Ms. Darden and I serve on the Water Authority, and everybody in the area, this is a trend throughout our entire, well, get ready to rest of the, in the state of Virginia, this is where they're going, and they're going in a hurry.
We're seeing a major decline in the surface elevation of the aquifer. There are some places in the region that have declined 200 feet since World War II. It's impacting all the localities here in the state, in the region. It's impacting the folks to the west more than it is us, because the trend is for the groundwater to come from the higher elevations to the lower, so those folks have a smaller vertical window to pull from. Some issues associated with this are your wells could run dry, you lose storage capacity, your pumping costs are increased because you're pumping up at a higher head. Land subsidence is somewhat attributed partially to groundwater withdrawal, and so Virginia has the highest rates of relative sea level rise on the Atlantic seaboard, in part due, we believe, this report states, due to groundwater withdrawal. So groundwater is a major issue. Continuing on that theme, 1.27 million gallons a day is the town's current permit capacity. That capacity was exceeded in '07 and '08, and it was reached in 2010. And in fairness, those were spikes along the way, monthly spikes that increased or went above the allowable withdrawal. But nonetheless, it signals that the town is approaching its permit capacity. And the process that is used, it's not intentional, it's just the nature of the process. It generates 16% waste. So 16 gallons out of every 100 is dumped back on the ground. That actually equates to, at the town's current pumping capacity, they waste the volume of water that's needed by Gatling Pointe on a daily basis. It goes back on the ground and it's not used.
If they were running at 1.27
If they're,
max.
that's what they're, at pumping today, at today's rate at about 0.8.
Okay.
They're using slightly more than Gatling Pointe would need every day. When they reach 80% of the capacity, they're going to be required to submit an expansion plan to the state. Right now, they're at 64%. The DEQ report indicates that the town's estimate was to grow at 30 homes per year. At that rate, they'll reach their capacity in 22 years, the 80% level in 22 years. Again, these are long-term situations that we're talking about, not a short-term 1, 2, or 5 year horizon, but 10, 20, 30, 75-year horizon. At a 2% growth rate, which is what we think is reasonable and actually supported by the historic growth rate of 1.78%, they'll hit that capacity number in 12 years. Should we take Gatling Pointe and serve them with WTWA water, that gives the town a bit of a cushion. They can, in other words, substitute their Gatling Pointe flows to add customers and give themselves a little more time until they reach that 80% threshold.
12 years is not long at all when we're talking about long-term water. Not long at all.
So, correct. That's right. I mean, these are long-term issues that we were facing. So the addition of any new customers increases the groundwater usage from any new town customers, increases their permit problem. They have to withdraw more groundwater. There's about 933 acres that fall within the current town boundary now that are developable. At 4 units an acre, that's 3,700 potential residential units that could be added to the town. Their permit capacity is going to be reached after 1,900 additional. So there's a deficit situation there. If we take Gatling Pointe, again, they can serve 2,500, but they're still going to have a 1,200 shortfall. Any use of WTWA water is a step in the right direction for Isle of Wight. We're obligated to use it. We need to have customers that can buy it. We're only using about a sixth, maybe a little less than that of the water we're already paying for. We're also, as Ms. Seward indicated, paying other entities, the towns of Smithfield and Windsor and the city of Franklin, combined for about 0.2 million gallons a day, which is about half of what we're purchasing from, or what we're using from WTWA, which begs the question, why are we buying water from other sources before we meet our own obligation? Service to Gatling Pointe would increase our water usage by 29%, and it would help the long-term demands for both the county and the town. We feel, given the town's bumping up on their permit capacity, that we will be able to serve, we would like to serve a portion of the town's demand and work with them in the future. And again, they've got to submit their expansion plan when they reach 80% of their capacity. We think customers are coming. Again, I think I mentioned the 2% growth rate that we think is reasonable. We are and have been growing at 1.78% annually. So to defray that $3.8 million, or to pay for that $3.8 million construction cost, we need to bring 950 residential units, or the correct term is equivalent residential units, to the county system over the next 30 years to match the bond cycle. That equivalent term is important, and Basically, it is a way we can equate commercial growth to a household use. A quick example, the average home consumption is about 200 gallons a day. If we had a commercial business come through that used 2,000 gallons a day, that would be the same as 10 homes, or it would be 10 ERUs. That's a hypothetical example. A real example is Eagle Harbor Apartments. Their tap fees are going to be coming due this year, and they're going to generate about 220 ERUs, or $1.5 million, from the tap fees for that one real project this year.
Is that the?
It's about a third. I'm
Is
sorry.
that the existing Eagle Harbor apartments or the new ones? The new ones that they're building?
Yes,
Because that'll bring in 1.5 million, okay.
yes, ma'am.
And that's strictly connection fees?
Yeah, this tap, I'm sorry, I've got
Yeah,
ahead of myself. Yeah,
connection, water
those are
and sewer connection.
Okay.
water and sewer tap fees.
1.5 million.
So that's roughly a third, a little bit more than a third of the cost. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself here. The Scott Farm area that we showed previously, pardon me, Scott Farm area is likely to develop. We would like to see it develop in the county. If they developed today during their current land use, they would bring in 35 ERUs. Should they be rezoned under today's suburban residential land use, they'd bring in 330 ERUs, which is $1.3 million. That's roughly the same density as Gatling Pointe. So between Eagle Harbor and Scott Farm, we're covering a little over 2/3 of the entire cost of the line in the short term, in terms of the investment for this water line. So,
Do I understand, Don, so that 1/3 of this we're gonna get like very shortly,
one
In
third
the
of it
next
is
12 months.
in the next 12 months?
coming, right.
And then the next third would be whenever that,
Yeah, that is,
yeah, we don't know just when
That's a
that
that
is.
may, that's totally subject to anything new.
Subject to development, et
That's
cetera.
right.
But it's already defined and it's already owned by developer and he's expressed an interest going forward, et cetera. Okay, and then the density is the same as Gatling Point, so it's not.
Well, it's currently only approved at the RAC, and
Well,
that's 35.
I understand,
Yeah.
but that's common to the area at least, okay. Thank you.
okay, we're almost home here. We talked about on the summary slide of what we're going to talk about, the dangers of doing nothing. If we are proactive and we invest the money to build this water line, we provide a partial fix to the water usage problem we find ourselves facing, and we get a return on our investment for running the line. If we do nothing, we'll never eat into the reservation fees that we currently face. This year it's $3.65 million, so those numbers are pretty close. You could invest 1 year's worth of reservation fee and attempt to use the water we're obligated to use anyway by contract. Taking action puts in place a plan for us to build this line, and it works to provide a return on investment and to minimize future tax increases. Doing nothing makes tax rate increases inevitable. If we take action, we invest in construction and yield positive benefits like a future supply, a backup line, and financial stability. Doing nothing keeps us on a negative path. If we build a line, we're able to use the WTWA water at a lower rate currently, and we'll discourage the losses that we would incur by annexation. Doing nothing tacitly promotes annexation. If we take action and build a line, we allow additional capacity for the town in the short term and provide a sustainable alternate source in the long term. Doing nothing kicks the can down the road on the town's solution to their permit capacity issues. So kind of in closing, I'd like to remind you of a quote from Will Rogers, "The law of holes. If you find yourself in a hole, stop digging." So in my opinion, it's time to stop digging and start using our water. With that, I'd like to share the recommendation to authorize staff to proceed with the presentation of the preferred waterline alternative to the Planning Commission in accordance with Section 15.2, 2232 of the Code of Virginia, 1950 as amended. I'd be glad to attempt to answer any questions.
Questions, Mr. Jennings?
This is really a win-win for the county and the town.
We think so. We'd certainly like to find a way to work together with them. Absolutely. Again, long-term planning, that's not the easiest thing to do, but it's the right thing to do.
I'll stress that the numbers that the town, the cost of that water has increased 64% in just 5 years from the town. What it's gonna do in the future, I have no idea. There's no guarantee. I'm not surprised that the town offered to extend the same agreement, but 64% wasn't the max. I mean, I don't know what it is. I have spoken with Vice Mayor Gregory, and I'm gonna talk to him some more about what may or may not be what their thinking is, but I want to share with them our concerns and the reasons that we just don't feel that that's matches. This, and I'll point out too, this water authority increase of 16.5% over 5 years, that's pretty consistent. That's going to stay pretty consistent with the water authority over time. It's not going to go to, it's not going to approach 64. I mean, the whole water authority is us and Suffolk, and this stuff is mapped out for many, many years out in the future, not just 5. It's way out there. And as a matter of fact, we've already adopted the new rate for this coming year, which is our very latest bill showed, and it was like a little over 4% increase there, which is consistent with what we have here over the course of about 4 years. So we got a very stable source that is very economical relative, for a very long time. See, when we're talking about water, you have to remember that it's not 5 years or 10 years. It's more like what he's saying, 75 years. And we know that, we sure hope that Gatling Pointe's gonna be there and still need water over that whole period. And Mr. Gregory tonight said that the project would break even in 15 years. Well, so 1575, that's 5 times that rate. So that you'd be getting additional returns. So there's a lot involved. It's a complicated issue. It's not just short run. Short run thinking just will lead you in the wrong path. And so this is important. But we are going to explore. But I'm going to talk to the town, see if there's any avenue there that might work that would address these issues. But I don't see how they can. They've got their course somewhat set. But we need, in the spirit of fairness and so forth, we need to at least explore it, but yet at the same time, we need to go forward with this process, make sure the planning commission finds it to be consistent and appropriate.
And if I'm correct, Mr. Popovich, this is simply to move it forward to the planning commission, what will be addressed, and then come back to us for a decision. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Now that you have the proposed plan or the path based on the report, now would be the appropriate time to send it to the planning commission for their consideration, which is one of the requirements of the Code of Virginia.
Ms. Jordan?
It was some talk tonight too about the Shirley T. Holland Intermodal Park. We already have in the plans, it's already been budgeted, that we are extending the Waterline from Suffolk down 460 to the Intermodal Park.
That's
So
correct.
this is all part 2 of the long-range plan to find water customers.
It's not either or.
Right.
They've actually both been given the green light and have been moving
Right.
forward. But again, it doesn't get constructed like that.
Right.
So you all took a lot of action.
So we currently, we will, we've already got that going.
That's
So
right.
it's not like we have forgotten the intermodal park. That's in the process, that's in the plan, and we're working on that.
That's right.
So this is just another way on the northern end of the county to help pay for this long-term debt.
That's right.
Those plans are about 65%
That
complete.
intermodal part,
What did you say, Don? I'm sorry.
The 460 Waterline extension plans are about 65% complete.
65%
Of
complete.
design,
and
of
they've
design.
been in the
Design.
plans for years.
Years, right.
This is not something we suddenly decided to do.
It's
That
gonna-
was a part of it from the start, was to supply that intermodal park. That's there wasn't any point in doing it, because the town couldn't carry the load.
Suffolk is continuing to complete the design for their work on their end. They've got to build a tank and I believe a booster station and a line to connect at the city-county line, and we'll take the line from there,
Right.
build our own booster station, and run it to the existing,
And you said we're 65% almost complete on that design work.
on the
65%
plans.
on the design phase?
Yes, sir.
65% of the design, I'd like to, different subject really, but kind of the same. We're also, the design of the 3-pad ready sites, they've already been. So staff's moving. All the things we're hearing we need to do, we are doing or have been done. So,
Other comments? Entertain a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we,
Send it to the planning commission.
yeah, but I was gonna do what Mr. Popovich likes for us to say, but it's not in here. So I'm gonna authorize this, I would make a motion, we would authorize staff to proceed with presentation of the preferred waterline alternative to the planning commission in accordance with section 15.2-2232 of the Code of Virginia from 1950 as amended.
Any discussion?
Again, this is going forward to the planning commission. This is not,
that's correct.
we're running the line. And I have spoke to my friends in Smithfield and shared with them that this is a procedural thing, not necessarily a final action.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Castine?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Jennings.